Hey everyone, it's Don with Don's Field of Dreams Cards. Hope everyone's doing well. Doing a video for my friend James, Elite Hunters, fellow misfit. He wanted to hear why we like vintage. And I'm going to kind of go through why I like vintage through the cards and items I'm going to show. And I have quite a few here that I'm going to show tonight. But to me, it's storytelling. And I tend to gravitate to channels that have a story behind the cards. Um, a lot of stuff here you've seen before, but there's a story behind it, or maybe something I learned, or just great items. Um, through these cards that I'm going to show. And for me, it started in 1976 collecting cards, and so I got to pull cards out of packs that are vintage. So I was a kid during what is now the vintage era, and I've told this story before. I wiped out on a bicycle at my neighbor's yard and tore up my knee and got 15 stitches. And the woman across the street brought me a pack of cards, and there were 76 tops. So this is the first set I collected as a kid, and it remains one of my favorite sets because of that story. I remember my mom uh, going to what was called Murphy's Mart here in Pittsburgh, kind of like a Kmart or Target today, and I think they were a quarter. I never know if it's cello or CeeLo pack. And her hiding it from my dad, or because he didn't want her spending the money, or he would when they go away for a weekend, would stay at an aunt or uncle's house, and she would throw a pack in our suitcase and not tell us about it. When we unpacked, there would be a pack of cards. So another card from that set. And I got three cards I want to share, and told this story before, and again, a lot of this is going to be repeats, but the real last conversation I had with my father before he passed away was about three guys that he grew up with in it's an area of Pittsburgh called Lawrenceville. And when he was a kid, it was predominantly a Polish area. I'm 100% Polish, and that's where my roots come from, that part of Pittsburgh. And we never talked about baseball cards. I don't even remember how this story came up, but I'm glad it did. But he mentioned these three guys he grew up with, and after he passed away, I went out and bought the cards. And I believe there's 3 of 12 kids. So you got Bob Sadowski, Ed Sadowski, catch the ski on the end of their names there, and then Ted Sadowski. And so my dad actually knew these three guys. So amazing that 3 kids from one family, kind of like the Alou brothers, made it to the major leagues. To me, vintage is art too. I love the older cards and the artistic. I don't know what the word is, but just what they put into these cards. And for me, it was a learning experience getting back in. I didn't realize a lot of these cards came from photos until I got back into the hobby and discovered that. And especially the 1950 Bowman set, got Larry Doby here. If you go back, you can look up most of these cards. This Jackie Robinson is, you can find the photograph of that. Warren Spahn. And I haven't seen the photo of this, but I imagine it's out there. You've got Ralph Kiner as well. And as far as art goes, I think these 2 cards I'm about to show from this set, these could be paintings hanging in a museum, in my opinion. And one of my all-time favorites is Bobby Doerr. And you got the Mechanical Man, Charlie Gehringer. And don't have a lot of pre-war anymore, but I do have an Archie Vaughan. So the cards from this era, like the Gaudis and the Play Balls and the Diamond Stars, are some of them. These next 2 cards I'm going to show came from a collection of one of the founding fathers of sort of card collecting, and that's Lionel Carter. And so to have cards from an iconic collector's collection that you really are not going to have with newer cards, unless maybe it was, a certain ball player had the cards or something like that. And not a knock on modern. There's some great cards. And but for me, honestly, I'm lost when it comes to modern. there's so much out there, and I wasn't, I was already through high school pretty much when the junk wax hit, and the modern cards and the numbered cards and the refractors and parallels, and um, it's just too much for me to learn, and I just don't want to spend the money on a card like that when I can get a great vintage card. Not currently buying cards, but we'll get back into that someday. But let's get back to Lionel Carter here. So we had a great Diamond Stars Rabbit Moranville, and I don't know if you can see, but it says the Lionel Carter collection on it. And then I also have a Bob Gibson, a 64 from his collection. So we have those. Again, just some random cards here. Look how beautiful these are. Like it just speaks of the time. And I'm going to say that again when I show a few other cards here. The Great Yogi. Love this Duke Snider. And when I was speaking about cards of the time, and this is kind of a set that I think you either love or you hate, or maybe it grows on you, and it did for me. But the 55 Bowman, I mean, that just screams the 50s. TVs were just coming into households. People listen to games on the radio for years, and now they can actually see their favorite teams and favorite players on the television with that. Another set that I think is one of the most beautiful sets ever made is the 56. Just I know the 55s are similar, and I'll probably catch some heat for this, but for some reason that set just doesn't resonate with me. It's not one of my favorites. Probably my least favorite of the 50s, but the 56, even though it's a lot of the same photos here, this added action in the background is really cool. And here's a card that has a story. If it wasn't for YouTube, I wouldn't know that this is Willie Mays sliding in. That technically, I guess maybe this is an error card, but just so many things like that I've picked up. Or unique sets. This is a set that's near and dear to my heart that I didn't really know about until I started studying vintage. And it's not a regular issue top set, but it is from Topps. And like this card here, I'm sure there may be a few oddball cards of Clemente throwing, but there's just not many cards of Clemente. And it has all the stars of the day in the set. And one more from there. And then just some iconic cards from the hobby. This is my favorite card of any card in my collection. I've probably said that a million times before. This card's on loan from a good friend of mine. Look past the wrinkles and the condition of this card. Just look at the great blue background and the red. Just an iconic card of Stan. And you're going to see a theme here. There's going to be a lot of Stan Musial shown tonight, but that's the heart of my collection. Just another card that's considered an iconic card, and look how beautiful this rookie card is compared to one that has 2 players on it or 4 players on it. It just doesn't compare to me. And then, going back to the artwork, the St. Louis Browns, haven't been around for a long time, so maybe you'll pick up a card and you're not familiar with the St. Louis Browns, and it might entice you to, go do some research on those cards. I have not done a video in a while on players that played in the Negro Leagues, the major leagues, but through cards, I've done research on these guys, and I'm learning about these guys that fortunately got to play in the major leagues, even though they started off in the Negro Leagues. They came along just in time. Ray Noble only got 1 year in the major leagues, but that's 1 more year than Josh Gibson got. Harry Suitcase Simpson, and the great names and the nicknames these guys all have. Speaking of another nickname, Sam Jethro the Jet. So they all had colorful nicknames. There's great stories about the Negro Leagues that you learn. You pick up the card, and then you do some research on them. And then you got, the food issues, like, how great is this dog food card? This one's rivaling that Satchel Paige in my collection. And then, Wheaties cards back in the day. Had no idea they made cards in Venezuela. Cards from '67, the year I was born. So not a plain days card to Stan, but a very tough card to find of his. And then you have stuff like, you know, these postcards. Roberto Clemente here. The big fan of the Red Man. You know, and Jake, Legends Never Die, bought a Red Man tobacco, the whole pack, a few years ago at the National. And you get to see things like that. Like, I think the packaging is great. You know, you got to see how these cards were distributed back in the day. And then, you know, it's just not the cards that I like, reason I like vintage. I mean, you find things like this. You know, I found this tin at the National one year. Didn't even know this existed. So, you know, when I can find something unique for Stan, it's just fantastic. Or old postcard, Forbes Field that Picker Jim sent me, and it's always kind of neat to read the writing on the back. Or like a Rawlings piece. And again, these aren't obviously cards, but just great vintage pieces. You know, here's a photo pack from 1954 of Stan. Or like this piece from Clemente. I think I paid $10 for this. And so, you know, sometimes you can find items that are really cool, but they're not expensive. Like some of these advertising pieces of Stan. Just great. And I'm really finding magazines now. And this is a shout out to Jesse Think Blue 77 sent me this great piece here. And then about this one off of James, I have to show it because the video is for James. So just, this thing's in mint condition. So hope to get this matted and framed someday. And just great to have a piece from a fellow friend. And speaking of friends, Scott and Jake gave me this great Negro League piece that was autographed. I mean, I'm not an autograph collector, but I'm getting Negro League players autographs. You know, that's so unique. You know, I like cards like this. You know, it's Paul Skeens Topps Now. So I do get a few of these, but, you know, this versus this, all day long I'm going with vintage. And the guys that are vintage collectors that I've met, I said this earlier, you know, their channels, excuse me, they're great storytellers. And there's guys out there that present maybe something in a different way. You know, SGC reveals are nice, or PSA reveals are nice. And it's nice, you know, I bought this card this week, and, you know, I'm happy for the people. But when you tell me something and I learn something from it, that's what makes vintage so special to me. So as always, guys, thanks for watching my video, and I'll talk to you soon.